Vibe Union podcast, everybody's favorite podcast. I'm joined by Matt Farry. How are you, mate?
How's it going? Good to see you.
It's good to see you.
I love that smile.
That smile? This smile?
It's a great smile.
Thanks.
It's so genuine. Cheers.
I made it myself.
How's it going?
It's going pretty good. We're coming hot off the heels of, I was going to say my favorite gig that Vibe Union does, but that's so rude to all the other gigs because this is my favorite gig.
Well,
but then the other gigs are
they're
my
all your
favorite
favorites.
gigs. They're all my favorites.
Surely you can have a favorite. That's okay.
It fluctuates,
It's like
much like children.
Well,
you know?
hey, that's true.
I feel like I'm probably I'm a better child. I'm probably more a favorite of the children as I got older. I think I was a little shit when I was younger,
Yeah,
and then
okay.
I improved, and I think it flipped. Maybe I don't know if that's true actually.
I got a few cousins that were kind of like that as well. Like
Yeah.
as a kid, they were just like complete menaces, and now they're like heading wineries or working in like science and stuff. I was just like, wow, okay, you really turned.
I lead with the science, not that they're hitting wineries.
Hating
That's-
wineries.
Oh, hating what?
Like they're the head winemaker at
Oh,
a winery.
heading wineries. I thought just hitting wineries.
Hating wineries. Like,
Just like you're going on wine tours, and the parents are just, oh, that's my boy.
it's my shocking.
I'm so proud of him.
It's like my shocking approximation of Australian English. Just rearing its ugly head.
Hey,
So
before we really get into it, at the top, as we always do, there's no Jason here. Jason usually does this, so I'm going to take the reins for this one. But we like to acknowledge the custodians of the land that we are so privileged to record this podcast on and run our events on. The Wurundjeri people of the Kulin Nation. Sovereignty was never ceded. We pay our respects to elders, past, present, and emerging. And we always like to hit the point that this is the only country in the Commonwealth that has not signed a treaty with its First Nations people. So many voices have been silenced. Will we still get to share ours? There's more we can do for a brighter future. Now, we've hinted at the gig we're going to talk about.
Yeah, sure, yeah.
The gig that we're talking about is Tones, which
Tones
is
number
like
3.
our tiny desk rip-off, ideally.
ish.
That's what I'm trying to go for anyway.
Yeah, I get that vibe.
How'd you enjoy
I guess
it?
it's slightly different from Tiny Desk in the sense that there's like amplification kind of going on.
Yeah, which is a nightmare for the recording.
Yeah, that must be. I mean, how have you? Well, we should probably talk about the gig before we talk
Let's
about.
talk about the
all
gig, then we can talk
post-production.
about post-production.
But yeah, it definitely has that vibe. I mean, from the footage that I've seen from the previous 2 Tones, it always looks intimate, always looks really welcoming and homely. Yeah, it's really lovely.
Yeah, I mean that's definitely the point, is to be as intimate as possible. To platform, I feel like Melbourne. No, this is not Melbourne music. Just the music industry in general is always hype.
Sure.
Not all the time, but for the most part, like especially at least on social media, the things that do really well are the things that are like, oh, you better not miss this. It's going to be the best thing you've ever been to. Oh my God. And you're a real piece of shit if you don't come to our event. And you're a real piece of shit if you don't listen to this artist. And I hate it. I'm just like, hey, we're playing some tunes in a little intimate gig. Come if you want, it's just a place to express one's soul, to give other people the platform to do so as well. So I hope that was the vibe. That's what I'm
Definitely
going
was.
for.
When we were like asked like by my friends, like how's the gig? How do you feel about it? All that sort of stuff. Pretty much the number one thing that the other band members would say was like it was super intimate. It felt really honest. Kind of felt a bit vulnerable because you're like really in the eye, and there's obviously cameras around.
Yeah.
Which is kind of a different vibe than performing just in front of people. There's like a permanence about it that sort of changes it.
Absolutely. Cameras are nerve-wracking for sure.
Yeah, it's kind of weird, isn't it? Because they don't give you any feedback. Whereas people like, we started the song in sheep's clothing, and it's happened a few times now. I think it happened at Tones as well, where like that bass line comes in, and then people in the room just go, "Ooh!" And we're just like that. You get that back from people. If there was no one there, just cameras, you'd kind of be like, "Whoa, I'm really not getting anything."
We had that. I kind of had that thought originally when we wanted to do Tones. Of like, how big do we want the audience? Do we just want like 10 people in the room just to add a little bit of ambience to it and kind of get that feeling? But realize that like, no, to get the best out of the performers, you need the audience in the room.
The audience don't often understand how much a part of the performance that they are.
Oh, absolutely.
They're like the unsung X N member. Do you know what I mean? Like the X number of members.
which really shows the fuck up when people are talking through it. This is not happening, not happening at Tones, but just now I want to think about the biggest, not just the pet peeves, but the best things the audience can do and the worst thing that the audience can do. And the worst thing the audience can do is obviously talk all the way through it.
Sure.
I don't mind if you're kind of like, gazing off into the distance, you're not really present. I zone the fuck out during performances all the goddamn time.
Yeah.
It's actually part of the reason why I like going to live music, especially like live jazz kind of stuff. Anything a little bit more relaxed, ambient, I'm off with the fairies.
Sure.
I'm off in my own little world.
I get that.
I'm contemplating my next tale, the next thing I'm going to write, or oh man, I had a great dinner yesterday. But that opportunity to think is really exciting to me. But to then have a chat with a mate in the background, pull your fucking head in.
I know it's happened. It's happened a couple of times where I'm at a show and someone's trying to like start and talk to me. I'm like,
oh yeah,
I really like. We haven't seen each other in like 2 months. I get that, but maybe like in between, let's have a chat. And it's not like even a judgmental thing necessarily. It's more just like someone's pouring their heart out. Let's pay attention to that. You know, I don't think that this is a common thing that audiences do, but we did play. Man with Synth played a gig a couple of years ago, and I didn't. Yeah, someone asked us to play to support them. Great. I didn't quite suss the venue maybe more than because I was like, yeah, we'll just play. That's fine.
Sure.
There was like pokies machines and people smashing palmers and pots, and I remember just like 'cause some you've heard the songs maybe a couple of times now, and it's like. Songs about like breakup, songs about feeling like the worst about yourself.
Yeah.
And I'm singing all that. Meanwhile, people literally just like slamming like pokies and like they're just like looking. They're like looking. I can see them in the audience. The lights are on.
Yeah.
And they're just going like.
Like they're watching you a little bit.
They're like they're hardcore watching me, but just as they're smashing a palmer and a pot, and I'm like, I don't know. There was something about it that really took me out of the performance. I'm like, oh man, I don't want to be here.
Well, it is half service. Like, not all music, not all music by any stretch, but I've talked about this idea before. I lean heavily into this concept as a DJ. When DJs come on and want to be really righteous about their craft, about their art form, about like I'm going to play the set that I want to play, and I need everyone else to get on board with what I want to do. Sure. I'm like, with all due respect, half of your job is a service. You are here to provide for the audience. Whereas bands, there are functions, there are situations where bands are much more a service. A wedding is a great example. You can't play your soul. You can't put your soul on stage.
No one cares about your originals, bro.
No one gives a shit. Don't be passing out your mixtape to the bride and groom. Though maybe I've done it. No, it'd be fantastic. It'd be a great move. In those situations, 100%. Like you got to kind of shut the fuck up. But then it's weird to find yourself in those situations where they wanted a service. But you were there to provide a service. You're not that kind of band. You are bearing your soul in these songs.
That's it. It's just like and I think the other bands were kind of in the same boat, like 'cause they hosted the event. Right? They were like, hey, come here and help us support our single launch, whatever. Right. And I guess they were just happy to do it at an RSL type venue.
Sure.
And I was kind of like, is this what, like I didn't know that this was happening. You knew that this was happening because you obviously tried to put on an event here. Anyway, it's interesting. It's not where I would.
Yeah,
I don't see Man vs. Synth doing that, which is actually partly why I don't think we do that well as like a pub band generally, because it's not that service. We're not doing classic hits, and even our songs that are originals, because obviously you could do originals at pubs. Aren't really like sort of get rowdy and sort of just smash some beers kind of thing.
Totally.
Yeah, that's all right.
I think about that with my stuff. It's just like my hip hop is way more chill and wordy than. Obviously, there's so much lyrical hip hop out there. There's so much chill lyrical hip hop out there. But I think in Melbourne, the scene is limited. And so when people do go out, they're like, I kind of want to just turn the fuck up. And I'm like, well, you shouldn't have booked me then. Yeah. I'm not the guy. I'm not the guy for that. I should be playing I should probably be supporting jazz bands where people want to tune the fuck out.
That actually would
while.
Work.
Yeah,
your stuff.
That's my goal. I want to support jazz bands.
Yeah, or headline and have jazz bands support you.
100%. And probably have no one turn the fuck up.
Well, it's funny you say that because, I was very fortunate to fill in for your launch of the EP Liminal,
and now one of the primary members of the band.
Well, yeah, thanks again.
once we actually jam.
Yeah,
at some point.
Well, thanks again for that opportunity.
Thank you for being in my band.
It's funny that you joke about that because
Yeah.
you had quite a good turnout at the retreat when you did that.
Yeah, for sure. I mean,
That's good. I think I put it this way. I want to celebrate
Yeah.
your success because I'm invested in your success.
yeah.
You know, I want people to hear your music. I actually just show your
Yeah.
music to people.
Well, I do appreciate that.
I'm just
You're,
like,
you're definitely doing
look at
more.
this.
You're doing more marketing for my music than I am.
I do that for every band that I'm in that I'm not the main guy. I'm like, check this stuff out.
That's the only way it's gonna work. It's always. I mean, some people are really good at it. Okay, let's talk about that because how do you actually did some marketing for the gig on the that we did,
Yeah, I did.
and it was pretty goofy. It was pretty memey.
Yeah,
you know?
it was. Yeah.
How do you feel messaging people directly or promoting yourself online? Like,
man.
where is your? Do you feel a pit in your stomach while you're doing it, or you kind of get excited about it?
Okay, there's maybe 20 to 30 people
Yeah.
who have told me explicitly, I'm not on social media. I do want to come to shows. Can you please message me when you have shows? So I obviously don't
Cool.
feel bad if people have said, hey, here's permission to do that.
Yeah. Yeah.
The 20 messages I've gotten in the last maybe 2 to 3, two-ish years
Yeah.
saying, hey, come to my show.
Yeah.
And I'm like, we haven't spoken in 5 years.
Yeah.
You know, it's a bit weird to me, you know?
Totally.
I think
That's my hesitancy.
My perspective is this. If I think I make music that I like. If you like it, fantastic. I make content to promote the music or the shows or whatever that I think is kind of funny, generally speaking.
Yeah.
I can't, if I can't do it my way, I'm not going to do it.
100%.
And it's not a stubborn thing. It's more just if I'm going to go out and find what's the most popular song trending on TikTok right now, and then what's the most popular meme format, I'm just not going to care because it doesn't engage me that much. Whereas that idea, I was having a shower.
Yeah.
If you guys, the reel is basically just what's your favorite street in Melbourne?
Yeah.
Okay, and then I go through streets, basically choose the worst parts of the streets, and then.
It's so funny because you pick some banging streets.
You know, I chose good streets with the worst parts of them. I was like, Swanston. Oh, I don't know about that. Anyway,
Garbage.
the idea, and then State Route 29.
Yeah.
I was just watching a stream, and the person in the chat was like, "What's your favorite street in Vancouver?" And I'm like, "Oh, I wonder what my favorite street in Melbourne is." And I'm like, "You know what? My favorite street is going to be High Street, Thornbury on Sunday.
Yeah.
Come down."
Your focus on 24-hour pet meat is a fantastic, it's a fantastic choice.
Fresh pet meat daily.
Oh my god! You can only find that on High Street, baby.
Well, that's I went to that part of Google Maps. I'll have a look around, and then you just see all this random stuff. I was like,
it's actually a really hot spot. It's a really good spot.
Yeah.
There's a hot bread bakery. I'd love a hot bread sign on a bakery.
100%.
You know that's going to be the best bread in town.
Oh, well, there's a Vietnamese banh mi place just down the road from where we were playing.
Yeah.
And everyone went there, and they're literally just like, that is probably the best banh mi I've had.
Yeah, 100%.
So I was like, well, this is kind of happening.
It
is my favorite street now.
It's a good street. That was where when I first moved to Melbourne. That was where I was hanging on that street.
Yeah.
For a few years.
So basically, just to answer your question properly, I don't like reaching out individually to people unless they've sort of said, "Hey, I'm interested in your music. I'm invested in your music."
Yeah.
I just basically go, I have a certain interest in showing what I'm doing. If I'm invested in it, if I'm interested in it, I'm going to do that. If people are keen, they can come down. That's no dramas.
Yeah.
And to be fair, I think I get down on this sort of stuff a little bit because I hate marketing.
Yeah.
But
that's why I'm bringing it up, because I'm exactly the same.
It just feels like tearing your soul apart for some reason.
Because it's not working. It's working, but we're marketing on the same platforms where we see it really fucking working for certain people. Either they have marketing budgets or they are just loudmouth motherfuckers who message everybody who are in those kind of scenes where it works.
Yeah.
Or whatever reason.
They're just they might also just be in tune as to what people kind of want to see.
Oh, 100%.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Which is totally fine. That's great. Some people are authentically really good at marketing themselves. Maybe they've done a marketing degree, or maybe they're just like, hey, I do cool shit. You should come check it out. Great, good for you.
Yeah.
It's just not been my style.
Yeah.
But I do that for other people's music all the time.
Yeah, well, it's way easier for other people's music. It's way easier if you're not super invested if it's your thing, then it's still. There's part of it that still feels like a rejection.
Well, it just feels like boastful to me.
Yeah,
It's like, hey, I'm so good,
yeah.
you know, which
Yeah.
I probably feel more the opposite than anything.
It's such a big thing in Australia. The tall poppy syndrome
Yeah.
is massive. But it's weird that we're bombarded with American style social media and American style marketing, and then we see that kind of shit and go, "Am I supposed to do this?" And I know for a fact that some of my mates who I've grown up with look at the shit that I do and go, "Yeah, man, he's talking a lot about himself. I'm not a big fan of that.
Yeah.
I'd rather see you not here, mate. Thank you so
but
much."
that's the thing, like it's funny because I'm hearing that, like you're saying that about yourself. Like, fuck that, just talk about it, man. Like,
I'm still
do the same
I'm
about
still
myself.
I'm still more present on social media than probably anyone that I know within that circle
Sure.
of people who I grew up with. But it's still in the back of my head. It's
Yeah,
still
yeah.
fucking locked in there of like, maybe I should keep my fucking head down. Maybe I should shut the fuck up about
Stay in
this.
your fucking lane.
Stay in my fucking lane. But then no one's gonna know I'm doing anything. What the fuck we do?
I know. That's what I'm saying. Like, it's really tough. I think maybe it's not a uniquely Australian thing, but it is. It does feel like a part of Australian culture to be
Definitely.
you know, in a sense, be polite. Don't be too braggadocious. Don't.
Yeah. I know there's other parts of the world. I've heard similar things from Irish people.
Get it from British culture for sure.
Yeah, 100%. So yeah, anywhere in Western Europe, I feel probably has a similar vibe.
Look, I spent some time in the States, and I'm very critical about a lot of things there. I will say one of the positive things.
Name one thing. Name one thing.
That would be tough. But one thing that I thought was really interesting.
Yeah.
Sorry, go on.
No, they just made they just half passed a law, and it still needs to get through one other thing. I can't remember how the US politics works. They're basically making so the president has just complete immunity from any wrongdoing as long as it's classified as official business. So if they send SEAL Team 6, they're like, hey, can you take out my my political adversary?
Sure.
You are completely non-liable.
Yeah, that doesn't. I mean,
so good.
It is actually masterful how tragic it is.
Oh yeah, it's gonna be a great story when the dust settles.
Well, yeah. Did you? Because you're quite heavily involved in politics.
Yeah.
What did you? Watch
I'm not involved. I'm watching.
Well, yeah, and maybe interested.
I'm very interested. Yeah. I'm chronically online. Is the issue?
All right. Do you touch grass?
I try and avoid it, to be honest.
Really?
Yeah. Fuck yeah. I don't like going outside. It's cold. It's wet. It's weird. People are out there.
Your skin type also probably doesn't suit it.
Oh my god. I had this this line in my head for a little while. That if you get sunburnt in your own backyard, you are not meant to be here.
Sure.
And that is me all through and through.
That's so funny because I come from Lebanon.
Yeah.
And my skin, like, I'm quite pale now because it's middle of winter.
Yeah.
But in summer, like, I just get like super brown basically.
Yeah.
And I do great in Australia, so I guess maybe I do belong here.
That's yeah. All right. That doesn't really. It doesn't hold up under all scrutiny. But considering which group of people
That's what I'm
colonized this country, I'm gonna stick with it.
That's totally fair. I think because I don't know if you want to necessarily go down this path, but I think part of what's happening with me is like I do feel a bit alienated from parts of Australian culture.
Yeah,
I mean, surely everyone feels that
sense.
a little bit from
like
from a societal perspective, but like born out of the country from the Middle East, came here. I do speak English relatively, well.
I think better than a lot of the fucking white Aussies as well.
But the point is that growing up very like fob, like fresh off the boat, especially my parents are very Lebanese.
Yeah.
And then I'm doing this very Western thing, which is like rock music.
Yeah.
Not to say that doesn't exist in Lebanon, it absolutely does. Like jazz is thriving in the Middle East, rap is thriving in the Middle East.
Listening to a lot of Lebanese jazz at the moment. It's been fucking great.
It's fucking cool.
Yeah.
It's really cool. Actually, some of my friends are there right now playing a bunch of mostly like they're doing some fusion stuff, but they're also doing a lot of like classic Middle Eastern music.
Yeah, sick.
Actually had one of them on my podcast.
Yeah,
and
beautiful.
It's just so great to see that happening again because for a good period of time, maybe like the 30s until maybe like the 60s or 70s, maybe even longer, so much of what Lebanon was doing was like, hey, we're kind of Western too.
Right, yeah, sure.
Which I can understand the appeal. And I can understand maybe why you were doing that.
Yeah.
But I think it came at a cost of look, there's a strong Lebanese identity. So I won't say at the cost of Lebanese identity, but at the cost of maybe preserving old school Lebanese stuff.
Totally.
Like we became so Americanized in Lebanon with regards to even something as simple as just like weddings. Like they're now just $200,000 US like affairs. You know, where, when I asked my parents, like, hey, what was your experience of weddings growing up? They were like, man, we would just go to we'll get married at a church and then go to like a restaurant afterwards.
That sounds great.
I'm like, that's what I want to do.
Yeah.
I don't want to spend like $70K like, you know, on shit that doesn't matter, like flowers and whatever.
Fuck no.
I just want to go to like, we were at Johnny's green room and there was a wedding party there.
Yeah, yeah.
And I was like, fucking sick.
Yeah.
That's so baller. Like you're all here, like dressed way better than everyone else. You got like a 20-person table. Everyone's like looking at you. It's fucking cool. Like, kudos to you.
We got to bring that back with the cost of living crisis. If you can barely afford a fucking house deposit, then there's no fucking way you can also afford to get married.
No one can afford that shit.
No.
So we're probably not going to own houses.
Oh, there's no fucking way. I got to wait for my parents to die. That's the only way it's going to happen. So fucking fingers crossed sooner than... No,
well,
I love them. Come on, baby.
So either that or our marketing stuff starts to work and we take off.
It's just, so I reiterate, I got to wait for my parents to die.
Okay, right.
So what's some parts of Australian culture that you feel most alienated by?
Oh, I guess there's a bunch of things. I think like I was having a chat with my friends about this recently that like I don't know. Maybe you can tell me if this is like Australian culture or not, because we're talking about the politeness thing, right?
Sure.
And I think that is like, maybe that's a nice way of saying that's part of Australian culture in terms of like, you know, don't be too obnoxious. Don't put yourself too much out there. Stay in your lane.
Yeah.
I am very like with my heart on my sleeve.
Yeah.
And like I'm very opinionated, and we are talking about that with me and my friends recently, and they're like, it's like kind of strange being your friend because you're just so happy to give your opinions and stuff. I'm like, yeah, my opinions don't matter, but like I feel like that's not cost me friendships or anything, but people are kind of like, man, why are you so much like that? Like,
I think because I've got, my dad's Canadian. And Canadians are nowhere near as loud as Americans, obviously. These are broad statements, but we can't have too much finesse in this conversation. We got to use broad strokes. But he's still nonetheless had a little bit of that. He's Canadian and a hippie and a poet, so like his heart is on his sleeve. There's blood fucking everywhere. It's unbelievable, and I've got that ingrained into me. So I think that's probably where I'm at odds with that as well.
Yeah,
like, I would like to express myself, bare my soul, and then in Australian culture, it's not is not encouraged as a general rule. I don't know. I guess there's that almost classic working class. You're supposed to be at the factory or the farm or something like that, or just like, keep your head down, shut the fuck up, go to the footy, drink a pint, be normal, please.
Yeah, a little bit. Also, just not growing up with a bunch of like the cultural references.
Yeah.
You know, people are like, how do you not know this thing? And I'll be like, I'm sorry, but how do you not know like all the Lebanese comedy or like, you know what I mean? It's just like, it's the same thing.
Yeah.
Kind of, except they're not living in like Lebanon. You know what I mean? But that's kind of what it was. And I think that from a personality perspective, the wearing your heart on your sleeve is like, I guess it's very important to me because I think that's how we make connections with people, by actually showing who you are.
My go-to for this is when you meet someone, what do you ask them in Australia? What do you do for work?
Sure.
I don't know if that also applies to lots of other countries, lots of other places, but I hate that question. Hate it so much. If you're just working in an office or you're working as a plumber or something like that, unless you are super passionate about plumbing, which fucking, Godspeed, very beautiful. But for the most part, there's that attitude of kind of like working class sensibilities, but you're expected to hate your job at the same time. And so that question I find is really disconcerting.
Okay, so I'll only push back on that like 10%. Please. Only 10%.
Please.
And I feel comfortable doing that with you because I used to date. So the reason why I was in the States for as long as I was because I used to date an American. And when she came here, I hung out with my mates and we met obviously new people here. Yeah. And I think after the first time she met my mates, we'd spent maybe 4-ish hours out just chatting, having drinks. And we were on the car home and she goes, I don't know what any of your friends do for work. And I was like,
oh, okay, interesting.
I was like, yeah, why would you? And she's like, Well, we finish work in the States,
Yeah.
and if I see my friends, we just talk. If we're having drinks, we'll just talk for like 4 hours bitching about work. I'm like, whoa,
Right.
why do you
Right.
care so much about what your friends do? Like, I mean,
Yeah.
venting is one thing. My friends vent to me about things that happen at work. That's no
Yeah.
dramas. But like, she was like, that is kind of the basis of the connection.
Yeah.
I'm like, really? So it's not that I'm saying we don't ever talk about work, because if I meet someone, it's
Yeah.
just like, here's a talking point. What do you
It's
do
a
for
good
work?
talking point. Yeah.
But, she was like, it is like the basis of friendship there. Whereas
Yeah.
here, I'm like, man, honestly, some of my closest friends, I'm like, I don't really know what you do.
Yeah.
for
Yeah.
work.
Yeah.
Which I think is a good thing.
I think it's a good thing. But I do understand that you do need that jumping off point. I was very averse to just small talk in general until maybe the last 3 years of my life.
Yep.
And I think it came from watching Formula One, and I had a customer come into the cafe that I work at, and it happened to come up. And they're like, oh, I think it was during the Formula One. Formula One was happening in the city. And they said, oh, you're watching the races. And I was like, oh, shit. Oh, God. I can actually talk. I can talk about sport. And we talked about sport to this guy. And it clicked. Like, oh, I understand why sport is important to society. Oh, my
Yeah.
God, that's so
It's a
stupid.
community building thing.
100%.
100%.
And anyone who fucking wants to have a yap about like, oh my God, all these people are going to Formula One and it's so loud and they're so obnoxious. It's like, there are so many fucking people. There's like 500,000 people go to the Formula One every fucking year in Melbourne. That is culturally significant. That is important. That brings people together.
It's actually phenomenal.
It's a beautiful thing.
Yeah.
I went for the first time and it was one of the best experiences of my life.
Okay, that's fucking cool.
Yeah.
That's actually really sick that you went. That's really cool, because I haven't quite gotten into Formula One yet.
Yeah.
But I remember I used to live in Hawthorne. I'd be able to hear it all the way from Hawthorne. I was
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
that's crazy that we
Yeah.
can hear that. What was it like being there?
The thing that I didn't expect was the smell.
Oh, like burning tires.
Burning tires, burning high octane fuel.
Right, sure.
Oh, I love it.
It's like at the petrol station. It's like,
It's exactly that. But I think like watching it on TV is great, but it's not visceral.
No.
This is visceral. You feel them go past. You feel the rush of wind. You feel the impact you feel the bass in
and
your
it's like
guts.
that,
And
isn't
you
it?
smell the smell. It's so fucking good. I went on the practice day. It is fucking quick. It's
Yeah.
stupid. But I went on the practice day, so I think we only saw the Formula One for like practice session for maybe all of an hour. Besides that, it was V8s. They were way more interesting. V8s were terrifying.
Yeah.
They're just louder, and you can see the momentum of them going through the
Sure.
corners. And then there was what do you call it? Historical laps and stuff like that. Old cars going around.
Sick.
It was fucking cool as hell.
Yeah, great.
Yeah, it was great.
Man, there's so much. I feel like that is such a great like bouncing point for so many different things. The first thing, have you ever like looked at the logistics of the F1?
Oh yeah, for sure.
There's really great videos on YouTube
It's
about.
insane. It's one of the I saw the title was like the world's most expensive circus or something like that,
Sure,
the biggest circus, and it's the shipping containers that's sent a month prior that have all the parts and everything. It's
really cool.
phenomenal. It's phenomenal.
It also makes me think, just to try to tie it into music, kind of like, I
Yeah.
think the Chili Peppers for the last 10, 15 years I've been touring with an A rig and a B rig.
Yeah.
It's kind of a similar vibe logistically with regards to like, you know, let's say they're in Melbourne
Yeah.
and they're using the A rig and they're like, cool, our next show is in Adelaide. So the B rig will already be there and
Already
setting
being
up.
set up. Yeah,
You know,
yeah.
and testing, and the like all the technicians are kind of like, cool, this is like what the sounds are going to be like, or testing all that.
Yeah.
Then the Chili Peppers fly there. The A rig then goes to Perth where the next show is. Do you
Yeah.
know what I mean? Like that, like all of that is actually kind of interesting to me.
And seemingly impossible. Like it's just such a level of organization for a gig.
Couldn't
It's
be
just for
me.
a show. It's crazy.
Couldn't be me.
I couldn't be part of those teams. I'd be so fucking frustrated.
So this is another thing with regards to sport as well.
Mm.
Like I've always found it sort of strange. I'm glad that you sort of had to come, like what they call it, a come to Jesus moment with,
Yeah,
with
for
sport.
sure, for sure.
Because I've always found it strange when I've talked to people who are in the music industry, who are kind of like, or the arts, for example, who are like
Yeah.
looked down on sports. I'm not.
That's where I got it from. Is from the arts. Is my dad is an artist, and he would just like, we do not talk about sport in this fucking household. We do not talk about it. We hate everyone who does.
Sure. And like, I can understand from the perspective of like dominant culture, like you don't partake in that. And there's a bunch of tossers in that, right?
Of course.
But there's fucking tossers in the arts.
Of course.
There's tossers everywhere. There's tossers
and I would
in every
argue
group.
that there is the biggest cultural force is still the music.
Man, it's such a big industry here.
Name a sports star who is bigger than the Beatles. Name a sports star who's bigger than Michael Jackson or
even if
Kanye
we look
West
at
or fucking,
I'll
try and name less problematic artists, but whatever.
But you know what?
They're the biggest fucking names. The biggest fucking names.
Even if you look at people like Pele or Messi or whatever, who probably have some of the largest followers on Instagram. Like I think Messi has like the largest
I don't know who
follower.
those people are.
Well, he's a soccer player. Anyway, I'm not a big like sports fan.
Yeah.
The reason why I'm talking about this is because, there is, of course, there's a point to it. Of course, there's a reason why people get together. And if I can, because I'm an immigrant to this country. If I can say something really positive about Australia, it would be something like this. We treat sports, I think, very seriously, but not so seriously that it starts to become problematic for people. Whereas when I was living in Britain, it was problematic.
There's riots.
People that get violent, people like toilet paper other people's houses. Whereas, I've had British friends, come down here and there'd be like the footy on, and obviously there's two different like team colors on the train.
Yeah.
And then people on the train, like if you eavesdrop, will just be like, hey, yep, Tigers did pretty well tonight, didn't they? Yeah, yep, fair game. You guys, I don't think that umpire call was their best, but whatever.
Yeah,
game's a game, and then that's kind of
no fists are thrown. And there is obviously there is definitely fists thrown at some point for over football. But this is the side of Australian culture that I really fucking like, and it is, funnily enough, though, it is the cause of the tall poppy syndrome, which I hate. However, that not taking anything too seriously is just that. I think that's the foundation. Everything else stems from this. Everything else is just no dramas, no fucking worries. It's too fucking hot, so shut the fuck up. Don't fucking worry about it. I love that so goddamn much.
It is good.
Watching parts of the world just go insane, and Australia is just like, what the fuck are you doing? What the fuck are you worrying about?
Yeah, it does. I guess the other side of that, apart from the tall poppy syndrome, is that I think. I guess I'm passionate about this because I've chosen to live here.
Yeah.
Whereas I can't make comment about anyone else, but I think a lot of people are just living here because this is where they happen to be born.
Of course.
But
I have no great passion or national identity.
Yes. See, that. I guess I'm not necessarily passionate about being Australian so much as I'm passionate about the gratitude for being able to live here. Like I'm very grateful, especially with things that are happening in the Middle East right now. I'm very privileged, as an immigrant to be able to live here.
Totally.
And I'm looking at my cousins in Lebanon who are super worried right now, and I totally understand that, and that makes me feel all kinds of guilt, to be honest, because I'm like, why am I here? Okay, because my parents decided that they were going to leave there. And it's not like they were particularly privileged. I mean, they were working in, like, my parents were working in the Bonds factory when they first got here. My dad worked at an abattoir, worked at a printing press.
Yeah,
they did they worked, like, dad would work 2 jobs and mum would study.
Yeah.
And then mum would work 2 jobs and then dad would study. God damn. Just so that they could make it in this country.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? That's how I grew up, was sort of witnessing them fucking working.
Yeah.
Literally putting in 16-hour days to get the family by. Yeah. So it's not like they were coming from a place of privilege, but they were just kind of like, we're dipping out of here before shit gets really bad.
Yeah.
And that was the attitude that I grew up in this country, was like, hey, this is how bad it can get.
Yeah.
It's pretty fucking good here.
Well, I think, that no worries, that kind of relaxed attitude of Australia has been around for a long time, but I would say at least like modern version of it. Probably most Australians don't realize how fucking phenomenal things are here. And I've
wanted to be critical. Let's
yeah. I've gone on socialist and communist rants to you, I'm sure, before. But I've brought this up to people before, and they're like, "Do you actually think there's going to be a socialist revolution in Australia?" Like, no fucking chance. The last place it's going to happen is here, because things are so goddamn good. It is so piss easy to get by, and there are terrible things here, terrible things here. But like, that acknowledgement has to be made that, like, oh man, we are chilling the fuck out over here.
We are
chilling. So easy.
Do you know Akmal Saleh?
No.
He's a Egyptian comedian. And he has this joke. I remember seeing it as a kid, and that inspired me to understand. He was like, "Do you know what the closest Australia's ever been to like a revolution?"
Yeah.
And the crowd's like silent. He goes, "It's the Cronulla riots." right? And there's the Lebanese, and literally the Lebanese and the
Yeah.
Aussies going to war with each other.
Yeah,
all
right.
right? And he goes, "Do you know what ended the Cronulla riots?" Silence again. The cricket. Because everyone was like, "Oh, cricket started."
Yeah.
We can't take anything too seriously.
No. Which is important for a revolution.
It is.
You have
It's
to be
important.
really, really serious about it.
And it's important for things to get better. I understand that.
Yeah.
Trust me, I understand that. I guess it's just I like to temper conversations with, "Hey, just remember, it is actually good here."
Oh,
You
yeah.
know, because it is easy to go. And look, sorry, just again to bring this back to music, I don't think I could have the kind of career that well, career is a strong word. I don't think I could.
I think we're in the similar boat. Yeah.
Definitely.
Yeah.
I don't think I could aspire to the kind of career that I
Yeah,
want to
yeah.
have in. Like,
It's called a
Lebanon.
lifestyle, at least.
Definitely a lifestyle. But the thing is, I could have this lifestyle in Lebanon,
Okay.
you know, but I just couldn't. I
You
couldn't
wouldn't see the
cope.
twinkling star at the.
I couldn't cope to that.
Okay.
Do you know what I'm saying? Whereas the music scene in Melbourne is on fire. It's
Oh, yeah,
great.
for
I
sure.
love it. I
Yeah.
love being a musician here. There's
Yeah.
a reason why, like Brennan in Wade's band is here
Yeah.
from Perth. There's a reason why artists
Oh,
from
yeah.
Tassie come to Melbourne. You know, it's kind of like the mecca of music.
Yeah. And anyone who says says that the other cities in Australia can compete can fuck right off.
They might have their own scene. Like if we talk about
for
the
sure.
Frio scene, great with psych rock, great
Yep.
with they're doing some great stuff in Perth.
Yeah.
I don't know anything about Sydney, and I am Melburnian enough to struggle to talk positively about Sydney, unfortunately. Tassie has some pretty interesting things going on. Don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
But there's a
Every
reason.
place in the world, every little city in the world is going to have a little something going on.
Yes, but what's happening in Melbourne is there's so many fucking cool things happening at the
Yeah.
same time. I mean, look, just we're in Radio Bar right now.
Yeah.
This is a cool venue. Later
Yeah.
on, we're going to be doing a Vibe Union event,
Yeah.
and that's sick that they host us.
Yeah.
And that we're able to do something like this.
Yeah.
I know that you were shouting out a sister poetry night down in Mornington Peninsula.
Yes.
You know, obviously not Melbourne, but sort
Yeah,
of kind of
yeah.
loosely associated.
Yeah.
Maybe Greater Melbourne region.
Yeah.
Tones is able to happen.
Yeah.
Street festivals have Brunswick Street Festival. St Kilda Fest is going to happen. All those things. There's so many interesting things happening from a organizational perspective, and then there's just venues that have 7 nights a week music.
Yeah. Which is under threat due to various economic situations that are happening at the moment. But for the most part, it's so alive and so happening. At least the people are so frothing it, which is so fucking good to see. I just look at scale. That not just scale, but like if you like, I think to struggle to try and get out of the Melbourne scene, go into the international scene from Melbourne is still a huge
hard.
struggle. My brother is a jazz musician, and he told me a
Really?
quote from one of his mates. One of his mates said to him, who is a touring international artist, and then he said to my brother, if you can fucking make it here, then you can make it fucking anywhere. If you are happening here and you can get out, you are sorted. You are
Right.
no dramas. But to get out of here and to make it here, like to make a living,
difficult.
to make it, that is nigh impossible.
Yeah.
And I think that's just due to an economy of scale. Like there's just only so many people in Melbourne. It's a vast city, but it's population wise still pretty fucking tiny. And then you go to other cities around Australia.
Yeah.
It's that, but then times 2. Like it's even smaller in
Sure.
terms of scene. Sydney has a similar population, but in terms of the support for the culture, support for venues, there's just fewer people going out to live music.
Yeah.
So you're fighting with every other artist to try and get people to your gig.
So here's something I want
Some
to.
broad strokes, but there you go.
That's we got to start somewhere.
Yeah.
So here's a question that I've sort of always had in the back of my mind for you specifically because you run Vibe Union.
Sure.
And you're also a muso.
Yeah.
Do you feel like being a musician in Melbourne,
Mm-hmm.
running an event, essentially like an event-ish kind of company,
Yeah.
that music is a cooperative or a competitive pursuit?
I think it depends if you're talking economically. Like I think in terms of both. Like I think competitively, if you want to actually pack a club, like a if you want to pack like 200 people into a room, then again, there's only so many people to come out to on a night. But I think the only way to actually last for a long time is cooperating with other people.
Yeah.
Is I think I've thought about this more with just as artists in general. That if you want to blow up as an artist, be it solo or as a band, it can happen if you just luck of the draw. You roll the dice and you get double sixes and fucking what have you. I don't know how the analogy works. Sweet, but in general, what actually propels you is a scene.
Yes.
You have to either make a scene or be part of a scene. If there is a scene for what you already do, plug yourself into that scene. If there's not a scene for what you already want, if you want to do, make that scene. You have to be the seed of that scene.
So I think like a rising tide raises all ships, right?
Yeah.
Which is where the scene thing comes from, because you know, heaps of people doing really well. Maybe two bands in that scene are like maybe exceptional.
Yeah.
If we're talking like maybe Melbourne example would be Mild Life. Do you listen to Mild
Yeah,
Life?
100%. I saw them at Triple R recently.
Oh, how was that?
So fucking good.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
They're so sick.
There's one of the best spaces to see bands in Melbourne as well.
Yeah, for
go
sure.
see them live at Triple R is the best sound I've experienced in
That's
Melbourne.
so good.
It sounds like you're listening to a vinyl record
Yeah.
in your living room, but there they are. It's so good.
So like the only thing that I would add on to that is like I feel like Mild Life kind of paved the way for Glass Beams in a way. Do you listen to Glass Beams?
Yeah, big time.
Yeah, and I kind of feel like
this is the shit that I'm really into at the moment.
yes, there you go. I fucking love both of those bands.
Yeah.
And it's not like I'm not trying to say that Glass Beams couldn't have made it. I'm just trying to say that there's probably 100 bands or maybe 50 bands or something like that are all doing something akin to that, and they're all gigging a little bit, and suddenly there's a little bit of magic with Mild Life and a little bit of magic with Glass Beams that people are kind of like, whoa.
Same with Surprise Chef, Karate Boogaloo, Proteins. I'm going to go see Surprise Chef and Proteins play at Nightcat soon.
Sick.
I think Melbourne is. I think that shit works so well in Melbourne because it's chill as fuck.
Yeah.
I mean that is like the no fucking worries, like new instrumental funk cinematic kind of experience. You know, it's got that bit of Italiano disco kind of vibe to it. You know, I think that works really, really well in Melbourne.
Yeah.
Same way, I think there's a great scene for King Gizzard and Lizard Wizard and all the bands surrounding that. Pond, Tame Impala obviously went international, but like that scene works so well because they're bearing their soul, they're chilling the fuck out, but also it just sink some beers in the backyard, put it on those guys. That works so perfectly. Melbourne just loves to
There's like
fuck
hell
those
yeah,
guys
bro.
up. And there's a scene for it. And I think that is the new scene. Even Hi-Yo's Coyote plugs into the Mild Life and the Glass Beams scene in my mind of that sound.
Well, that's actually a really good example because I mean, if you're looking about 10 years ago now,
yeah,
for Hiatus Coyote,
yeah,
10 years ago, Melbourne was just neo soul.
yeah,
No,
yeah.
but
For
I
sure.
don't say just.
Of
I
course,
mean,
there's
heaps of shit going
scenes.
on.
Yeah, yeah.
But like neo soul was like almost.
What was coming out of Melbourne? I think there's always stuff happening in Melbourne.
Yeah.
But what's going out? What's going out
Neo
into
soul,
the
man.
international scene?
It was so cool.
Hi-Yo's Coyote got sampled by Kendrick Lamar and by Anderson .Paak. That's fucking
Incredible.
absurd.
That's
That's
crazy.
crazy. They're walking down the streets in Brunswick.
Yeah, literally.
That's insane.
And it's awesome.
You can bump into them at a record store. Then Anderson .Paak's like, yeah, those guys are fucking cool. I'm gonna hang out with those dudes. That's great.
Yeah, it's awesome.
But yeah.
Maybe one of the counter example would be someone like Gautier.
Mm-hmm.
Because I don't know what scene he was really part of. He's from Mornington Peninsula.
Yeah, right.
And
He's
I
from
can't.
Wellington.
Yeah, he is.
Right.
Yeah.
Huh.
And I don't know what scene he was part of. And I'm not sure that he was necessarily gigging a ton.
Again, I think there's always always
Exceptions.
the exceptions to the rule. But if you want to go down that route, there's no fucking chance. And
That's more of a-
I'll tell you this is part of the reason I love running events and I love like giving people a platform to host to bear their souls. That is my primary drive. I get a genuine high from it, a genuine kick seeing people try out their poetry here for the first time. You know, like I go, oh, get those warm fuzzies. But also a big part of it is I can't do this alone. So I want to give as much as I can to the community, build everyone else up. Take me with you, please. One of you take me with you. If one of you guys makes it, because if I helped you in any way, please, I'll be yeah, go ahead, but like we're gonna send a little something back my way. You know? Yeah.
Well, okay, so I think that's a really good way to maybe segue, if I may.
Please.
Back to the whole tones thing. So what was that like
Yes.
for you?
Stressed a little bit because I wanted a bigger turnout, but that's more the business event side.
That's totally, and that's
running.
completely valid, frankly.
That's my job. That's my job to stress about that, so everyone else doesn't. But then, genuinely, that high, it is that seeing when I look at the audience and I see smiley faces, people fucking bopping along, rocking out to the people on stage, and I see the people on stage having a good time. I get this sense of genuine purpose in life.
Yeah.
So that's the tones especially is tones, and there's a reason we're only doing these 2 gigs at the moment, tones and radio talk. It's because these are chances for people to bare their souls, and have everyone else go, "Oh, nice, I like that." That's all it's about. And yeah, tones was this looked good as well.
It looked great.
Fuck, it looked good.
Oh man, the photos taken by Porsche.
Yeah, Porsche
Awesome.
Jensu one.
So good.
Yeah, fucking legend.
Very talented.
Very good photographer.
Yeah.
Hire.
Definitely. Do it. She took some really good photos. I think I told her it was a Herculean effort to make us look that good. But the setting was really great. Georgia did the setting.
Yeah.
The lighting was really great. How did it sound out the front?
Sound was great out the front.
Yeah.
I will say the recordings are a little bit rough. It's a small space. It's a very small space. So there's a lot of cleanup I have to do.
So the main thing, if you're happy to talk about it,
Please.
The main thing from my perspective, because you were very gracious to give me those multi-tracks as well, was the vocal mic basically has everything in there.
Yes.
The vocal mic in particular.
Yes.
Yeah. Had just a ton of bleed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We were confused by that as well. That's been my experience. The lead vocal wasn't too bad for Maxwell Brady's band.
Yeah.
But Kelsey Jean and Jack was on the drums and had a speaker right next to him. I expected bleed.
Yeah.
Kelsey's was just like, basically acting like a room mic.
Yes.
I'm like, I don't know what the fuck happened.
I think I was in Kelsey's line or something like that.
Yeah, okay.
Or in similar position, maybe not same position, but like I remember listening to mine, I'm like, wow, this is
Send it to me because I've got some AI isolating plugins that I've got recently that are fucking
about that.
Yeah,
Yeah,
they are working magic.
But I actually really liked some of the tones from the kit. Obviously, the overhead mics are going to have.
Sounds good. Kit sounds good.
Kit does sound good.
Yeah.
And obviously, the synths in my band are going to sound super clean because it's just DIs.
Just DIs. Yeah.
But yeah, I was like pleasantly surprised with that. Man, I will say, I've been suggesting this to other people, and I think I need to do a bit more of it myself. Listening to myself sing is one of the most humbling experiences. I'm not like this is not like a please tell me I'm actually okay. It's literally like when you record yourself, the microphone doesn't sugarcoat anything.
No.
And I think listening to some of those recordings has basically inspired me to be like, okay, I'm going to spend an amount of time every week playing guitar simultaneously, because when I practice singing, I'm just singing. I'm not practicing guitar and singing.
Gotcha.
And that is a skill specifically.
Absolutely.
And so I think what I'm going to do now is play both, hit record, and then go, okay, this is where I'm consistently struggling.
And if you can loudly,
I know.
I think that's the real hard thing, because like when I spend so much time on my headphones, I hear my voice so
Crystal
loudly
clear.
back to me so often. I have really good control in that environment. And when I'm rapping really quietly because I have more control. I really enjoy the sound of my voice lower, and I enjoy the sound of being able to kind of work with the air and like the kind of more throat soundy kind of stuff. Live, that's all out the window.
I know.
It's all out the fucking window.
I know,
I
man.
can't sound that way live. It's nigh impossible. You have to learn, and now you have to learn how to do it a whole nother way, which is heartbreaking when you spend that much time in the studio finding that sound and go, that none of that really mattered for this situation.
The only thing that gives me any sort of respite is the fact that I feel like I don't want my songs to sound the same way live as they do on the record.
Yeah.
So that gives me some sort of like pass
100%.
to be like, cool, I'm just going to go all out.
I lean into that as well. It's like, you got to do it. You
have to. And I think Yeah, I think that's something that what's that band they did? Aha, Steely Dan, Aja, I don't know. Sorry.
Yeah.
They struggled to do live music because they basically wanted it to sound like the record, and
Well, that's like the go-to. I'm going to test my brand new beautiful stereo system. Is you put on that record, so like
it's perfect.
You can't replicate that live.
Well,
maybe in the triple R.
They kind of started doing that because I think they just got to
Right.
that point where their records were doing well enough that they could basically spend the money necessary to make their live shows like that.
Oh,
you know?
well, if you've got the fucking money and you're on big enough stages with the best mixing engineers and the best equipment
And the best musicians. I mean,
and the best musicians,
credit where credit's due as well.
as well, yeah. That yeah. Then Godspeed.
I don't want Man vs. Synth to ever sound the same way.
Yeah.
Look, I don't even want one live show to sound the same as the next live show.
No, I find that dull.
You know?
Why am I seeing you live? I could listen to the record.
Yeah, exactly. There's sometimes like even before the tones thing, I was like, man, should I like spend some time with my pedals being like, this is exactly what I want things to sound like? And I was like, no, I'm not going to do that.
Yeah.
I kind of just want it to be whatever it is on the night, as long as it doesn't fuck up, and it didn't really fuck up. I'm kind of happy with it being whatever it is on that day.
Yeah.
You know, that's kind of cool.
If it sounds, as long as the energy's there, and that might be having the best tone out of your guitar. There are elements to that, I think, but in general, yeah, the audience are there for the live show, and that involves seeing you have a good time, which you're great at. You're all smiles, you know.
How can you not? I don't know. I guess like there's some songs that we do that are super depressing.
Yeah.
But I'm still having a good time on stage.
I think when you're on stage, like you've got it out of your system by then. You wrote the song.
But it's not just that, because you kind of want to give a convincing performance of the song, right?
That's
Which
true,
partly
that's
is
true.
channeling those emotions. And it's not like I'm not channeling those emotions. It's more just like, even though I'm doing that, like behind me on the drum kit is the guy that I've been best friends with for like 15 plus years.
Yeah.
You know, and then the guy playing the bass over there.
Yeah.
I played in stage band with him in high school.
Yeah, right.
That's why we have like okay chemistry. And then we had to fill in Ethan. Ethan's great.
Yeah.
So that's great. Like he sort of slotted in really easily. I mean, you've worked with Ethan. He's just talented.
Yeah.
You know, he's great to have there.
He's a producer. He's got the ear for it. I like that.
100%. Otherwise, we have Rory, and like for us, we do weekly rehearsals. We do band dinner every week. You know, so we'll rehearse for an hour and a half.
Oh yeah.
We'll take maybe 30, 40 minutes to eat dinner, have a beer, just chat. Sometimes it's business. Sometimes 90% of the time it's just talking shit. Then we go, cool, we'll rehearse another 40 minutes. And that's our weekly rehearsal.
Yeah, right.
You know? And those 30, 40 minutes of banter are just so important. Of
course.
Because like we played a gig after Tones and I did a major fuck up.
Yeah.
And I just looked, you know, like 90% of the time, don't acknowledge the fuck up, just keep going.
No.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, of course.
But
that's radio rules. If you say the word fuck, you just keep moving. Do not apologize.
But this was that 1 out of 10 times that I think it was just so funny. Like it wasn't about, I didn't play a bunk note and then look at the audience and go,
oh yeah, sure.
I played the bunk note. I looked at Lee. We had a laugh.
Yeah.
And that was fine. Do you know what I
I
mean?
think if you laugh, the people, I actually think those are my favorite moments. If I see the band having a good time through the fuck up, fantastic.
I think because the band, so the audience is informing the band constantly whether or not they're supporting them, frankly.
Yeah.
To be honest, right? Because they're kind of like, if they're dead silent they're dead silent, sometimes that means they're paying attention, and sometimes that means that they're like, oh, this is really, what's going on?
Yeah.
And then other times they're just all talking because they don't care what's happening on the stage, right? But there's times where they're silent or they're cheering you on, and you know what that means on the stage. Likewise, the band is informing the audience how to feel, how to react to what you're doing.
Yes.
And so when we fuck up and we don't acknowledge it, you're basically telling the audience, assuming that they even knew, it's no big deal.
Yeah.
I'm above that.
100%.
If you laugh about it, you're telling the band, they're telling the audience, it's all good. We're having fun up here anyway. Do you know what I mean? If you start having a negative reaction to those kinds of things, two things happens. Audience tunes into that.
Yeah.
And then you start to think about it.
Yeah.
And there's no worse place to be on stage than 3 seconds ago. Right? Because it's like thinking a second ahead is really good.
Yeah.
Thinking 3 seconds behind, shocking.
Yeah.
And the best place to be is literally where you
now.
are right now.
Yeah.
And that's it.
Yeah.
That's really hard to do, though.
Yeah, absolutely. That's where I forget lyrics. It's 3 seconds behind.
Yeah, exactly.
We're going to wrap it up there.
Cool.
We're going to wrap it up there due to time constraints only, because we could
The
chat
dramas.
for another 2 hours.
You and I,
as we had the issue on your podcast.
Yeah.
By the way, actually, do you want to plug your show as we wrap it up?
Okay. Okay, I occasionally do a podcast. This is my problem.
Good start.
I occasionally do a podcast where I bring in people that I find really interesting for a variety of reasons, and we just talk. I try and make it as homey as possible.
Yeah.
You came around, I guess you got that vibe. It's in my home. It's in the studio in my home, so it's like kind of professional.
Yeah.
But really, like, we might have a coffee, we might have a beer,
Yeah.
have some food, have a chat about what you guys do in music. What is it interesting about you? What do I find interesting about you? Anyway, it's right now it's the Man vs. Synth podcast, but I kind of want to change the name.
All right.
So maybe you and I can brainstorm something with that.
Well, how about follow Man vs. Synth on
At Man vs. Synth.
on Instagram, which is in the link below.
Thank you.
Which I occasionally remember to put links. So 50-50 chance. Thanks so much for coming on.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Keep an eye out for the Tones videos, which are coming out at some point. There's no real schedule yet, but I would assume in the next few weeks to a month. Keep an eye out. You'll see it on this YouTube channel or wherever you see shit. That's it, baby. Thanks so much.
Big love.
Be well. Oh, music by Sixpence.